What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Wanted to give a recap of HBO's Boxing After Dark from Saturday, and just talk about some of the fights real quick. In the first fight, you had Canada's Antonin Dakari against a then undefeated Alex Perez. He ended up TKOing Perez. Dakari dominated the fight. He controlled the pace. It looked like Perez never really got into his rhythm or could figure this dude out. It really showed that Dakari had a more extensive amateur background in this fight. He looked a lot more comfortable and he looked like everything was routine, whereas Perez looked like he was always one step behind, kind of thing. The fight did end in TKO, as I mentioned. The ref had seen enough, and I think it was a good stoppage. The funny thing is, Perez, he was being examined by the doctor after the fight, after the stoppage, and they're asking him questions, flashing the light in his eye, and he was like, "That was a bullshit stoppage. Like, I understand you have heart, and you want to keep going, but that wasn't a bullshit stoppage. That was a perfect stoppage." Let me know if you disagree with that. Anyone that's seen the fight, I mean, I can't even make an argument for saying that was a premature stoppage. He was rocked. He wasn't doing anything. He was on the ropes, and he was losing the fight on the scorecards. I mean, any way you look at it, it wasn't looking good for Perez. All right, moving on to the next fight. You have ex-champion Vic Darchinyan and Puerto Rican fighter Orlandito de Valle. In this particular fight, Darchinyan really asserted his will and controlled the whole pace of the fight. There were a couple moments where Devalle looked like had Darchinyan hurt or stunned later in the fight, but he wasn't able to rally and do anything else beyond that. So this went to decision, and it was a unanimous decision for Darchinyan. So that puts him back on a positive note. He had two losses prior to this fight, so that puts him back in the clear. He's trying to get his career on a comeback path. So any win will help, especially against a then undefeated Orlandito de Valle. As far as Darchinyan, I think he was more of a threat in the smaller weight divisions. I don't know exactly how far he'll go on his comeback trail. Orlandito, I don't think it's over for him. I think he's still young, and it's a good learning experience for him. He needs to learn to get an earlier start. It looked like he had a very slow start in this fight, and later in the fight, it proved that he was able to, when he put things together, he was able to hurt Darchinyan and rock him. So if he would have tried to do that a little bit earlier, you might have seen a different outcome or maybe a closer fight. As far as Darchinyan, I'm not too fond of his fighting style. It's very unorthodox, and I don't have a problem with unorthodox. There's other fighters like Roy Jones Jr. and Sergio Martinez, and they're unorthodox, but I like their style. As far as Darchinyan, his style is like unorthodox slash dirty. He like kind of tends to headbutt the Timothy Bradley kind of thing, come in with his head all crazy. Um, Sometimes his shoulders end up hitting the guy all in the face. I don't know. It's just not my preferred style. So that's my opinion on it. In the main event, you had Edwin Rodriguez, and absolutely punished Jason Esceleda. He had him hurt in multiple rounds. The first round, you didn't even know if Esceleda would make it out of the first round. It was that intense of a first round for him. But this is to be expected. Rodriguez came in the fight night weighing 10 pounds more than his opponent. You got to give Escalita props for his determination and heart. He just wasn't able to outbox or outgun the game Rodriguez. Um, this fight ended in an 8 round TKO stoppage. Steve Smoger had seen enough, and actually, Steve Smoger stopped the fight at a point where, if you were to look at Escalita, he was taking some serious blows, and it looked like his ear had that UFC cauliflower ear, and his ear actually started to bleed. He was just getting ripped with hooks, and um, Rodriguez was landing the right hand at will. So anyway, Steve Smoger had seen that the ear was bleeding. He was against the ropes. He wasn't responding to the blows he was receiving. Um, so Smoger stopped it. It was definitely a good stoppage in my opinion. And that pretty much sums up the HBO Boxing After Dark fight card. Um, it was a pretty solid night of boxing. It was nothing spectacular, but some decent fights if you like boxing. Um, it also sparked an idea. I want to bring up a topic to you guys, and I seen it in the fights that I seen. I seen a lot of people who are down in the fight Orlandito de Valle and Esceleda, who were clearly losing the fight, and they just showed tremendous heart, kept coming, kept trying. It just so happens that they couldn't win. They didn't win. But they did show another thing, and that's a chin. They were taking some pretty impressive shots in the fights, and they didn't even seem to be too phased. Even in the Orlandito de Valle Darchinian fight, Roy Jones Jr. stated, because Max Kellerman had mentioned that de Valle's corner should stop the fight, and Roy Jones Jr. was like, "There's no reason to stop the fight. He's still responding. He's still coming forward. He's taking the shots well, even though they're big shots or flush shots. He's still taking them. You don't see his legs buckling. So there's no reason to stop the fight. He's not taking that much punishment to the point where, at that point, where Roy Jones said it, he had no opportunity to win." And he said, look at Sergio Martinez versus Chavez Jr. Chavez Jr. was clearly losing that fight for 11 rounds. Sergio was dominating. He was landing at will. And Chavez Jr. had a 12th round rally. So why rob Devalle of that same opportunity? You never know. And he's not that bad of a position where there's nothing that can be done to turn around the fight. So I agree with Roy Jones over Max Kellerman as far as that point. But it brings me to the topic I want to discuss with you. I'm going to give you some of my feedback and leave comments and let me know what you guys think. So I want to make a list of contemporary boxers with the toughest chin, granite chins, and see who you guys feel are. Maybe in a later video, in a future video, I'll do some of the throwback fighters. I want to keep this list contemporary. Maybe, like I said, maybe I'll do a throwback fighter and talk about the Jake LaMotta's, the Marvin Haglers, Mike Tyson's. But for this list, let's keep it contemporary, people that are still fighting or have fought probably in the last 5-10 years. And I'll start giving you some of mine. And again, you guys leave your comments. Let me know who you guys feel have the toughest chin in the game. All right, let's get right into it. So, as far as this list, I'm not going to put it in any particular order. It's just a laundry list of people who I feel have the toughest chin out of contemporary fighters. And we'll get right into it. When I think of this list, someone I got to put on there is, whether he cheated or not, Antonio Margarito. You got to put Margarito on there. Look who he's fought. He's fought Cotto twice, Paul Williams, Shane Mosley, Pacquiao, and he took big shots in, I think, all of those fights, and he still comes forward. He's a pressure fighter. He at sometimes he appears like unstoppable. You got to put him on the list. I also put Pacquiao on the list. Pacquiao, he's a smaller dude, but when's the last time you noticed him noticeably rocked in recent memory to the point where it looked like he was going to get knocked out? Pacquiao, he's been in there with great technicians like Juan Manuel Marquez. And some of the shots that Pacquiao took, other people wouldn't have been able to take, like Katsidis or whoever. So Pacquiao goes on the list. You got to put Pacquiao on the list when it comes to tough chins. I also put Shane Mosley. You can't leave Shane Mosley off of this list. Shane Mosley, he's been in there with Oscar De La Hoya, Winky Wright, Forrest, Pacquiao, Mayweather. It's like you can't leave him off the list. He's been in there with a much younger, stronger fighter in Canelo. Canelo didn't even knock him out either. So Shane Mosley goes on the list. He's never been knocked out in his professional career, so you can't leave Shane Mosley off the list. Paul Williams. And I know some of you guys are going to say, oh, Sergio Martinez knocked him out. Sergio has power, for one. And two, look at Sergio and Paul Williams' first fight. It was a close fight, and they were both landing big shots, big shots. And Paul Williams took him. In the second fight, just so happens he got hit with a shot that he didn't see, that he couldn't do anything about, and he couldn't stop, or he couldn't recover from. And that happens in the sport of boxing. But either way, you can't leave Paul Williams on the list. He's fought Margarito. He's had Winky Wright fights. He's fought some tough people, and he's taken some big licks and kept on ticking. So Paul Williams, P. Will, you got to put him on the list. Carl Froch. Carl Froch serves the UK well, unlike Amir Khan. So I put him on the list. He has a granite chin. His chin was definitely tested in the Jermaine Taylor fight. He weathered that storm, and he came out with the victory. So I would put Carl Froch in there. And I mean, Even look at the Ward fight, the Ward and Carl Froch fight. He was outclassed, but Ward, we seen what he did with Dawson, so he's capable of knocking. And I know you're gonna say, "Oh, Dawson was weight drained," but it still doesn't matter. Dawson is still a great fighter with the jab, and we seen what happened in the Ward Dawson fight. So you got to give it up for Carl Froch. He did take some big shots in some of his fights, um, and you can't doubt his chin. Kelly Pavlik. Gotta put Kelly Pavlik on the list. Kelly Pavlik, he's been in there with Sergio Martinez, and Sergio was hitting him with from angles, and he still kept ticking. Another pressure fighter. I can't leave Kelly Pavlik off the list. He's been in there with Bernard Hopkins. Bernard Hopkins was tearing him up, but again, he kept on ticking. Speaking of Bernard Hopkins, I add B Hop to the list. Bernard Hopkins, and look at the Jean Pascal fight. He was taking big shots, and he didn't get knocked out from it. So, big shots, and that's a younger guy. You got to think of Bernard Hopkins' age and think about who he's in there with and who he's been in there with, the Chad Dawsons. And did it go to decision or did he get knocked out? So, you got to put B-Hop on the list. Oscar De La Hoya goes on the list. I don't really even have to describe or explain Oscar De La Hoya why he makes the list. It's pretty much a given. Who else? We have Jesus Soto Caras. I don't know if you guys watched the Canelo Josecito undercard, but Soto Caras was taking some big shots. He was getting tagged with some big shots from Maidana, and he kept coming. It was like the Terminator or something. He was relentless, and yeah, I can't leave him off the list. So I got to put Jesus Soto Caras on the list. Who else? Jose Alusigan, another fighter. I haven't seen a ton of his fights, but just based on the Matisse bout, Matisse was clearly dominating the fight, but he was never really out of it until later in the fight. He was taking some big shots, and it was to the point where I was like, is Matisse going to punch himself out? Is he going to be able to stay up with this pace? Because this dude's taking his best shots and still coming and still fighting back and still throwing punches. So, can't make this list without including a Jose Alusigan, and this is based off of just seeing one fight primarily. It just shows that he has a chin. Couple honorable mentions to the list. Floyd Mayweather Jr. I think Floyd Mayweather Jr. has a very underrated chin. Most people just kind of cite his defense and they don't really consider his chin, but let me tell you, in the sport of boxing, there's no way your defense alone will stop you from ever getting hit. He gets hit, and he's been in there with people like Diego Corrales, Ricky Hatton, DeMarcus Corley in his prime, Zab Judah in his prime, Shane Mosley after a huge win, Cotto at his natural weight most recently. Floyd Mayweather Jr. has an underrated chin because, like I said, your defense alone is not going to prevent you from ever getting hit. So you have to be able to take some shots. It's just a given. Look at the Shane Mosley fight. Shane Mosley noticeably rocked him in round 2, and then what happened? He composed himself and went on to win every single round after that. So Floyd Mayweather Jr. definitely has an underrated chin. So he makes the honorable mention. I would also say Chavez Jr. Chavez Jr., I mean, he stood up to Sergio Martinez, who is someone I consider a pound-for-pound top 5 fighter, and he didn't get knocked out. But the only thing with Chavez Jr. is he typically rehydrates and outweighs his opponent by like 18, 20 pounds. But either way, it doesn't take away from the fact that he has a chin and he can hold up to the pressure and some big shots. His pops had an amazing chin, so it looks like he inherited that as well. Also from Argentina, Maidana and Lucas Matisse. They're both tough fighters. They're both heavy-handed fighters, but they take shots. Look at Marcos Maidana versus Amir Khan versus Victor Ortiz. They took shots in those, and they kept coming. Lucas Matisse, he took some shots from a Jose. He's been in there with Devin Alexander, Zab Judah. So I would definitely put Matisse on that list of having a chin. And that pretty much wraps it up for this list of contemporary fighters with the toughest chins. Let me know who you guys feel has the toughest chin in the game. And that basically wraps it up. Leave a comment, subscribe, hate. You know the routine. It's Ego signing off.